If we try to solve the problems of the world just through the materialistic paradigm, it only goes so far. Change the world, you don't have to be big, you just have to be contagious. It's a spiritual change of consciousness that we need.
Today, Nam has chosen a very interesting topic from the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
You want to give us a little context before I read the verse?
This particular verse was labeled as the peace formula, which I always found to be very interesting. The formula for peace. I think everyone's looking for that in the world. We're in a very chaotic situation at the moment in the world, and it doesn't look like peace is coming around the corner.
Yeah.
But so to see something, what's the formula for peace? What really makes up the things that we need to put in place to actually achieve internal peace and perhaps, hopefully, world peace as well. So I thought this was a good verse to set the scene.
Yeah, can peace be achieved by spiritual? Let's be honest. Can peace be achieved by spirituality? Huh? Is that the kind of like angle you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people see it as just escaping the challenge itself. Is there any tangible benefit? And hopefully, Maharaj, for this discussion, we can really understand from yourself, is spiritual practice a tangible solution to world problems in the extremity that we see them currently?
We're not going to name countries here, but we're recording this on the 4th of March. And some interesting things have happened with some big countries, those of you that are watching the news. And so I think it's good timing for this.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's such a topical issue and something that we kind of turn on the news every day, and it affects our emotional state, you know. I remember as a kid just kind of turning the news on and seeing all this suffering, and my heart would just sink, you know. So even if we're not in the war zone directly, it's affecting everyone, what to speak of the people who are in the middle of it. So yeah, definitely something we need to think about.
Yeah. Let's see if we address it. It'll be interesting to see where we go. This is the verse. It's from chapter 5 of our favorite book, the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 29. The translation goes, "A person in full consciousness of me," this is Krishna speaking, "a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries." So by knowing God, one can be peaceful.
It's interesting, right? And I think the reason I took this verse and why it's called the peace formula is essentially what it's saying is if we raise our level of consciousness to that spiritual platform, to a level of God consciousness or Krishna consciousness as what is known in the Bhakti tradition, how can an elevation of consciousness result in external peace? And I think what a lot of spiritualists struggle with is, spiritual practitioners are often labeled as individuals who are escaping. They're escaping the real problems of the world.
Spiritually bypassing.
Spiritually bypassing is a big term at the moment. But also, Maharaj, I think what would be really interesting to hear from your perspective, you're someone who's done an extensive amount of internal work and are actively doing a lot of work out there, educating individuals on spiritual solutions to modern problems. We hear that slogan, a lot. Is it tangible? Is a raise in consciousness actually a tangible solution to the problems we see, the extreme problems we see? Let's look at the big problems of life, not just the breakups, the relationship issues, the loneliness, those kinds of things.
Well, Einstein said you can't solve the problems of the world with the same type of thinking that created them in the first place. In other words, the world realizes that we need a fresh paradigm of how to look at life. It's interesting, I was talking about my travels, and in January we were in Davos at the World Economic Forum, and it's full of like conscious change makers, people who want to try and make the world a better place. And I was kind of walking around like this.
Lots of eyes.
Yeah, and it was amazing because people were just drawn and people wanted to know what spiritual principles can you give us, because we realize we need spiritual principles.
Yeah.
We realize that if we try to solve the problems of the world just through the materialistic paradigm, it only goes so far. So how does spirituality really bring about peace? Well, what I would say is that we could begin by asking ourselves, what are the problems in the world today? And if we take them back and try to understand what's the root cause of that, then we might get the idea of why spirituality is the key. So for example, if we say there are economic problems in the world, there's a rich-poor divide, people who don't have, even the basic necessities. And if we take that problem back to its root, then we'll find that the root of it is the greed which lies deep within the hearts of individuals. If we take environmental problems and say, why is there a problem in terms of how the earth is? And we get back to the root of it, it is because we depersonalize the environment and we see it as an object of our enjoyment. And that's causing. So I think when you begin to look at the problems of the world and then you get back to the root cause, then you understand it's a spiritual change of consciousness that we need. That's how I would approach it.
Yeah. A change of consciousness, which requires a change in thinking, a change of exposure. And I think that what's interesting with this is that I don't think people really want to change.
What's the impetus to change, right?
Do you know why? Because I think people inherently are quite selfish. They'll only change if it's benefiting them. And a utilitarian view of let's improve society, let's create a peaceful utopic society where there's no conflict. What benefits? I'm not going to be able to live in my mansion because of that. If I sacrifice my enjoyment, I'm playing devil's advocate here clearly, but if I sacrifice my enjoyment, how is that going to benefit me at the end of the day? And I think that that's where it comes down to people not wanting to change and expand consciousness. And I guess if we're going to be problem solvers here and we're going to blue sky think about this, how do we create and manifest the opportunity for people to change their consciousness? I've got my view on it, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think
Do you agree with that premise first and foremost?
yes. But in order to do that, one has to move from a level of selfishness to selflessness and to understand that there is still something to gain in selflessness, right? I always feel that the current world, we function in a way which, if it's not serving me, then I'm not going to enjoy. But if it's serving me, I will gain some enjoyment. But in serving others, there's no real enjoyment in that. So why would I change myself to do such a thing? What do you think, Maraj, about that? Because that's a critical point. When you look at a lot of news and you hear world leaders talk, they're always thinking about the GDP,
Me and mine.
of
My country.
of their country. This is my country. This is the economic state. I'm going to help you because it financially benefits me.
It's almost like we're going down that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? My country comes first, America first, India first, Ukraine first, Palestine first, Israel first. Okay, but where does this kind of rise in consciousness come from then? Who is responsible for that?
Yeah. Well, just coming back to your point about, the beauty and joy of selflessness. I think that's such a great point. And I think all of us have actually experienced that. It was interesting. There was a study recently where people were giving blood donations and they thought we need more blood to come in. So what they started doing is incentivizing it and giving a monetary kind of reward if you give blood. And the interesting thing is that the number of blood donors actually went down.
Wow.
And then they realized people want to
Figured
give
out.
it just for the sake of giving it.
Yeah.
They don't want to give it for money because they experience something beautiful in that.
Yeah.
And all of us have experienced that, you know, that what does it feel like to just help someone with no agenda? But then what happens is this kind of survival of the fittest, and I need to get my thing, that we kind of get overpowered by that again. So the first thing is, I would say that all of us have tasted in some small way, if not in a bigger way, the beauty of
the
selflessness, of giving.
Yeah.
But then the second thing I would say, which is the interesting thing about this verse in the Gita, is that I think talking about selflessness works when you give people a bigger picture of life, meaning, purpose, why we're here, where this world came from. You know, I think when we orientate our life understanding the bigger picture, then the idea of selflessness kind of begins to make more sense as well. And therefore, you know, this whole education about the big questions of life and meaning and who we are and why this world exists, I think we can't circumvent those questions. And we need to somehow encourage people to think about that. Because if the narrative is, I'm in the world, one life, eat, drink, be merry, enjoy, and then see you later, alligator, then it's a little harder to talk about selflessness.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So then on that, I was just thinking, something came through my mind is, do you have to be at a certain level of spiritual experience or, you know, a certain level of practice to be receptive to the fact that there is joy to be gained in these things? Because I feel a lot of these spiritual topics are very subtle, and when you're kind of, you know, looking at a world leader who's just hardline thinking about his nation or her nation or the people and the economic state, etc., are they receptive to the subtleties of spiritual experience and joys to be found in selflessness and willing to really see the bigger picture? Because there needs to be a certain level of
Experience.
Yeah, a certain level of, you know, thought or consciousness on a certain plane to be receptive to these things. I find that's the biggest thing I find is, how do you convince or bring someone of such stature or someone who's creating such mass conflict in the world to even be receptive to these, you know, these ideals and these solutions? Because Maharaj, you said before, like, if we look at the root cause of conflict in the world, it's the internal greed and this internal state. But if someone's not on the level to be receptive to those things, how will they ever change? And therefore, can we really create some world peace?
That's where the kirtan man in me is starting to go ding, 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 ding. I mean, that's the whole
You need
reason.
to do some kirtan in the conflict zones. That's what you need to do kirtan.
I don't know if I'm brave enough or surrendered enough or convinced enough of that. Yeah. But I think that's where, while you were speaking, I came to life internally, because I felt like, well, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I've given up working a corporate job and working a potentially lucrative job within my family, because I'm convinced, even if it's just a little bit, I'm not ready to go into war zones and chant yet, but I'm convinced that this is going to be the answer to bringing a rise in consciousness. The experience of congregating and singing together the names of Krishna, the name of God, whichever name you choose upon, that's of course up to you if you're watching this from a different tradition or a different faith background. But the idea is the chanting of the name of God brings rise to a certain level of consciousness. Now, that might be a step too far for people. So how do you bring people even to that point? Is it that we need to bring them to sattva gun, the mode of goodness, the mode of clarity? This mode is a difficult word to also translate. What would we call that?
Quality.
The quality of goodness. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're working on all the levels. I think as spiritualists, one kind of thing we're doing is just preparing the ground. As you said, bring in goodness, be balanced, you know, principles of good physical, mental health, good community living, that kind of message which everyone can accept regardless of, you know, how deep they are spiritually. Many people resonate with this. And I think one aspect of our work is just to do that and prepare the ground. But why I love what you do, Radhika, and the whole team here in terms of the concerts, why I love also being on social media, kind of, is just that what we're actually doing is we're contacting thousands of souls. And every soul is at a different state of evolution, as you said. But we just don't know who we're going to contact. And it just might, the penny might drop with even one soul or 10 souls, or the penny might just drop with one leader. Because everyone's going through what they're going through in life. And sometimes it's just some spiritual contact and the penny drops. And my estimation is that, and my experience is that even one spiritualist can effect incredible change in the world.
Yeah.
Apparently, someone told me that if you take a candle into outer space, then you can see it 12 miles away.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, someone can Google it and check it out. But
Drop in the comments. Check it out.
Yeah, if someone can verify that. But it's kind of interesting because when the darkness is so dense, a little light goes a long way.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And therefore, like, sometimes I think we feel overwhelmed. Like, we're here, a few spiritualists in a podcast studio, and there's like world wars going out there. And we think like, what difference are we going to make? But actually, any person who awakens their spirituality, and they can be a conduit, like an ambassador, an agent of incredibly positive change in the world. And so I would say our duty is just to kind of go out there and almost just give people an opportunity. And there are people who are in the zone to begin their spirituality, and they can do amazing things in the world.
Dropping peace bombs.
Yeah.
Obviously, with frequency, the chances of those peace bombs creating loving and higher consciousness atmospheres is going to increase. So how would we convince someone, I'm going to ask Nam, how would you convince someone to go out and drop a peace bomb on someone else, a love bomb on someone else? Like how do you convince someone that you could be the solution? I love this analogy that Maharaj mentioned of the candle in space. It's reflected, it's magnified 12 times.
Yeah, it's seen 12 miles away.
Seen 12 miles away. I mean, you know, with the density of more candles is going to be more light.
Yeah. I think that you can't convince anyone to go out and help with this weapon of bhakti and spiritual practice unless they know how powerful that weapon actually is.
Themselves.
Yeah. And how well they actually understand how someone else is actually suffering there internally in the world. Because that's a real driver, to know that I have something so valuable and I know how much someone really needs it. If I understand those two things, I have a great impetus to go out there and share it. Maharaj, we spent many years together traveling Europe, the UK.
You were both monks together.
We were. I had the very great pleasure of 5 years.
I'm missing out. I'm FOMOing over here.
5 years with Keshava Swami training me and learning the arts. And we traveled a lot. And I think through those times, the more I deepened my practice, and then the more I saw just how lost people were, I married the two. But do you know what was more inspiring for me? Was just going out there. And Maharaj, you said this kind of, you said, we just have to give people an opportunity. And if we just remain in that consciousness, I'm just trying to give an opportunity. I'm not trying to change anyone. I'm just trying to present an opportunity. When those ripe souls came and they were very receptive to what I was sharing, that inspired me a lot more, because I was like, people like that do exist. People are actually willing to change. And I kind of took it upon myself. I can't actually change anyone, but I can just present an opportunity the best I can, understanding you very well and trying to connect you with a spiritual practice, which I believe is extremely universal, even though it's seen as a very foreign thing. So I think those three things, I would say, knowing how strong or how potent the spiritual solution you have is, understanding someone's suffering, and third, having the experience of ripe souls coming to you, or ripe souls being receptive to you. Those three things I think were quite revolutionary for me, at least. I don't know for you.
Yeah, and just picking up on that, I mean, yeah, I'm just reliving the memories of
I want to know some stories now.
I'll tell you a funny story. You know one funny story before, man?
Yeah.
So in the ashram, you have different rooms we sleep in.
Right.
So you have a snoring room for snoring monks, and you have a non-snoring room, and then you have the cold room where just the windows are open the whole night.
Even in the winter?
Yeah. Some people just like the cold. Anyway, so I used to sleep next to Maharaj, and we would sleep in a line, and the non-snoring room. I sleep there. I was like, yeah, I'll sleep next to Maharaj. Maybe I'll get some spiritual potency overnight or something. And then
I know where this is going, because I know what this guy's like at night.
One morning, Maharaj comes up to me and goes, yeah, Nam, you need to sleep in the other room. I said, why? And he goes, you're snoring. I was like, I'm not. I'm convinced. I've never snored. He's like, you need to sleep in the other room. So I was like, okay. That was the end of my spiritual life.
It's funny because just like the other day, we were talking about sleep solutions and these like, nasal strips.
Yeah.
But anyway, off topic. We're talking about opportunities and going out and giving people opportunities. And Maharaj, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, before we brought up the snoring thing. Yeah, we had incredible times going around the country. We'd just like rock up in a town. Like sometimes the most random towns in the UK, Torquay or something. You know? And we just rock up in the middle of the street and start stopping people. And just like, hey, like, how you doing? How's life? And just talk about spiritual things. And it was incredible, like what Naam said, because sometimes we just meet someone and you just get into a conversation and it would actually get really emotional because it was almost like two souls were destined to meet and have this conversation and inspire each other, because that's what the universe needs. And it almost just felt very, very divinely engineered, the whole interaction. And I remember many times being on the street and it's almost like the whole world stops around you and it's just you're having this conversation. We even had these most mystical encounters. Sometimes we take videos of people like, and the amazing stories that we kind of encountered. So yeah, I would just say that it's such a beautiful thing. Yeah, this is what I actually wanted to say. I wanted to tell you a story that a guru and a disciple were once walking along the beach. And what had happened is that all these crabs had kind of been washed onto the beach. So they were meant to be in the water, but they were kind of struggling, like thousands of them, like struggling on the sand. And so as the guru and the disciple were walking, then the guru would kind of pick up one crab and kind of throw it back in the ocean. And then he'd walk along and then pick up another one and throw it back. And the disciple looked at him and said, what's the point? I mean, there's thousands of them. You're not going to make a difference. And the guru looked at him and he said, but it will make a difference to that crab. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. Like, what could be more amazing? We might look at the world and say world peace, and I don't think I can do anything for it. But what about if you could bring peace to one person's life? You may not be able to change the whole world, but you can change one person's world. And how amazing is that? Like, I kind of wake up in the morning and I think, what could be a better thing in life to do than to help someone just change their world? That for me is a meaningful life, and that's what gets me up every single day.
Yeah. We may not be able to change the world, but we can change one person's world.
Yeah.
And I think that often another obstacle for people to go out and to give love and to serve others and to rise consciousness in the world is people think they don't have resource and they don't have a microphone in front of them. They don't have money. I think that the greatest resource that we can have is the faith that by going out and giving a message that's less ordinary, by going out and giving a message of peace and love of God, why not use the G word, love of Krishna, that we'll see that Krishna reciprocates with us. And sometimes the easiest way is like what Nam and Maharaj did, which is to go to a place outside of your hometown, like where you're not going to get noticed, and go out and give them. People be like, okay, what do I give? What do I give? Give them a Bhagavad Gita, give them a little bit of kirtan, give them what you know from your heart, and be a vehicle and an amplification device of peace, an ambassador of peace. I like how you said that, Maharaj. I use that often as well, to become ambassadors of peace. And yeah, I mean, I can only implore everyone that's watching this, no matter who you are, don't feel that you have to wait until your singing is as good as being on the X Factor, or that your speaking is as good as being in front of the Oxford Union. You know, go out and give what you can. And if you're thinking, what do I give? What do I give? Maybe that's an impetus to go deep and read something, or chant a little bit more, or spend time with spiritualists, bhakti yogis, Krishna bhakti yogis. But I think that really is, I think, what we can take from this verse, no?
Yeah.
That world peace starts with us being vehicles of world peace ourselves.
And we live in a world of influencers. Radhika, you're an influencer.
No.
And I recently did an Instagram reel talking about influencing. And I was saying actually that the biggest influencer is not the one who has the most likes, the most followers, the most numbers behind their profile. The biggest influencer is the influencer who has love, generosity, and through their words and acts touch people's hearts. Because what they do is they influence people in the deepest and most sustainable way. And so everyone can be an influencer, because everyone can just embody that mood of generosity and love and go and genuinely help someone, and that will be contagious. Sometimes I also say to change the world, you don't have to be big, you just have to be contagious. Right? And therefore, what can be more contagious than generosity? So yeah, everyone can be that ambassador, and do it in your own way.
Do it in your own way.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to close off this conversation. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of The Soul's Sake.